Nen and Jujutsu Kaisen are the best mix to exist. In this video, I'll be going over 6 different characters from Jujutsu Kaisen: Sukuna, Nanami, Nobara, Ichiji, Meimei, and Haibara, and what Nen categories they would be in, but also how their abilities would look. As I go along, comment on whether or not you agree or disagree with my Nen categories and what type of powers that they would have. I'll quickly explain Nen categories, which are enhancers, emitters, manipulators, conjurers, transmuters, and specialists. Each category is unique and offers a variety of techniques that a person will be able to use to empower themselves. Luckily for me, there's also a description of character of each Nen category, which I will briefly introduce. Enhancers are straightforward, usually expressing how they feel. Emitters are impatient and short-tempered, with similar levels of impulsivity to enhancers, however they tend to forget and forgive a lot more easily. Transmuters are fickle and whimsical, and typically hide their true intentions and characters from others. Manipulators are argumentative and logical, and tend to try and keep their families and friends away from harm's way, ensuring that they are safe. Conjurers are overly serious and nervous, but usually they are observant and remain calm even in stressful situations. Lastly, specialists are charismatic and independent, and refrain from making close friends. I go into more detail in my other video, so if you haven't watched that yet, it should be in the top right corner. Come back to this video after, as I cover characters that I will not delve into in this video, such as Yuji, Gojo, and Megumi. The first character that I would like to cover is Nanami, who I believe would be a conjurer, due to his silent and stoic nature. He strikes me as someone that would fit this category perfectly. In many situations, he has shown to be calm and remain observant, even if the odds are turned against him, with an example of this being during his first fight against Mahito, and during his domain expansion of Mahito. Despite this front that he still has some unsettled trauma, due to the death of his classmate and debatably his closest friend, Haibara. In some instances, he has surrendered to his nerves. This could be seen during his fight against Mahito, and even during his domain expansion, which Yuji luckily saved him from. In regards to how his powers would look, I could still see him conjuring his blunt, glorified chef's knife, but with addition of perks similar to Kite and his roulette. This way, he could continue with a similar type of binding vow that he imposed on himself to have a boost in strength after a particular time. He could also work on the Nen contract by imposing his 7-3 ratio on his attacks, but he could also deliberately miss, so that he could gain a surge of energy stored within his blade, which he could later release. The next character that I would like to delve into is Nobara Kujisaki, which I'm having some trouble placing her into a category of either an enhancer or a manipulator. Her bashful nature and willingness to express her feelings is similar to an enhancer, which they act and think almost simultaneously. On the other hand, due to her self-driven nature, she works at her own pace and understands her own worth. This can be seen when she was first introduced to the cast. She came across as confident. As such, I'm willing to place her into the manipulator category. As a manipulator, her Nen abilities will be similar to her curse technique, allowing her to control nails that she imbues with her Nen. She could also impose similar techniques such as straw dolls, but by gaining other parts of a person's body, she can also use them to create a link between her and the person that she's taken a body part from. And naturally, the bigger the body part, the more that she'll be able to control. This wouldn't be used to just damage someone, but it could also allow her to maneuver, but it would also allow her to maybe monitor and physically move the person from afar. The third person that I would like to go into is Meimei, which I believe would be a specialist. Hear me out on this one. I actually struggle to put her into the category based on the Hiso Nen category types. The only group that I could argue her being in is a manipulator. Despite being logical, she's not very argumentative, but she has also shown to not care about others as much as she should, such as her brother. She is a kind individual who looks out for her peers, but she is also very independent and very much confident in her abilities. Due to her kind nature, she seems to bring others around her, which is actually characteristic of a specialist. We can see this in other people such as Gojo and Kenjaku, noticing Meimei's strengths. Nevertheless, as she is a specialist, she would be able to conjure up her own crows, which she could mix with manipulation to move them at will. Enhancement can make her crow stronger, like when she forms a binding vow to sacrifice her crow to deal insane amounts of damage. However, with enhancement, she would not need to form a binding vow to sacrifice her crows for the strength, as they would be strong enough. Transmutation would also allow her to mimic a crow, granting her the ability to fly and also the ability to communicate with them. All in all, her abilities as a specialist would look a lot like Tokyo from Chojin X, and if you haven't read that manga, add that to your list. Sukuna is the next character I'd like to go into, who I also would believe is a specialist. Due to his nature of being independent and not really needing anyone to help him, he fits into this category perfectly. We are already aware of his selfish nature, so there isn't really a reason to justify his categorization. As the strongest sorcerer in history, it's only fair to assume that he would have a broken ability such as Jing or Crollo Live Silver. As we are unaware of his current curse technique, it makes it somewhat difficult to predict his Nen abilities. However, with speculation of his curse technique being similar to Yuta, where he uses his shrine to act as a store of curse techniques, it would only be natural to use this as a basis. His overall ability would be Shrine, where he would be able to copy Nen abilities from others after seeing their abilities, talking to them, but also defeating their opponent permanently to get their ability. This is similar to Crollo, who has also imposed similar conditions upon himself, with him ultimately stealing their technique. Sukuna, on the other hand, who discards people who bore him, would fit the death of his opponents to get their ability. Ichiji is an interesting character to do, who I believe would be a conjurer, which I believe is quite agreeable. He is a nervous guy by nature, observant and quite strict in his ways. Despite that, he is a bit of a pushover, especially compared to those that are stronger than himself, such as Gojo. Despite being born a sorcerer, we have yet to see what his innate curse technique is, so again, predicting his overall ability may be difficult. Due to his nature as a conjurer and his lack of overall confidence, I think his Nen ability would most likely derive from something that would be able to defend him, such as a shield. This shield could be OP, maybe mimicking the ideals of Newton's law, where the shield could produce an equal and opposite force in the opposite direction. This way, no damage would be experienced by the holder of said shield. It could also store energy and release it to produce a heavy attack on opponents. As a conjurer, he could also produce substances that could help him fight, such as fire or air, as transmutation is the neighboring category. I took a tiny bit of inspiration from Shield Hero, but also Steven's universe, but I think Ichiji's character would fit that perfectly. The last character that I would like to cover is Haibara, who again we haven't seen much of within the series, but based off the interactions and the comparisons that have been drawn to him to a certain character, I believe that he would fit perfectly as an enhancer. Again, his curse technique was not revealed within the show, and it becomes difficult to suggest what he may have, but that's the most exciting part. He'll be able to store, I think his Nen ability would be based on gloves that he would be able to conjure. He'll be able to store a tremendous amount of Nen within these gloves and use them to attack opponents. He could also use these gloves as a medium to fire projectiles of Nen similar to Gon, were taken from Deku from My Hero, who has gloves tailored for his use as well. Thank you for watching today's video. If you enjoyed it, leave a like and subscribe, and let me know if you'd like to see more characters in another video. If you disagree with my suggestions, leave a comment with your thoughts. I reply to almost all comments, so leave your thoughts down below. I'll see you in the next video. Peace and stay safe.